Malang me anya ngo tanagong pa luchisli ngo kapeja pa nan tama TSD ka outgoing spokesperson kam assistant general secretary ngo lockdown sak do nasi ngo tak Chatung sir outgoing general secretary TSD salo ka ngani ka so press briefing ako ma pa aron nasi objective hai sasi ngunu ka election kolo 16 hoine haga bicho ichuje ne per ichuje doubt suspension or confusion che done ka public ata handing over number ba are mukman tara halakho done ham ichuje clarification mur ko pasake rangol misunderstanding do yo communication gap jaron hoji pe search committee under the chairman of Dr. Hagel Lasa, the retired principal of Yeshudi Common College, Dugla Dune, Homolu report me in time of submit Mubune. For election, 16th February 2025 conduct Mubune under the Chief Election Commission of Engineer Tarumaji. Ano I Mubune, successfully Mubune, fair Mubune. 19 February 2025 nan tacho rare lemba Nani ok complain ako multola he monuka central executive body and plus search committee mi aka complaint bila leakage ako hoitela la candidature pa mallala mo reasoning bibne ho ngunka constitution and bylaws ka article me under article 8 under bracket 6 and under bracket 8 hemi mo search committee ka roles function bi leakage violation bubune lala ako bibune hami ngunu central executive body latagla hal kora adato democratic rights those on me complain mudopa nguntare ma fair and fair investigation and inquiry hobo lage so that ngunga incumbent outgoing central executive body me allegation hangja domar pa hoka how nguntar hang munu ene masu fair and a proper investigation and inquiry mudopa nguntar ako kelto ho under article 10D governing council inquiry committee ako babane within 15 days submit modopa that was expected date 10 March 2025 ho ngun mulanu chindo article ngun bylaws and constitution do as per bylaws and constitution was is on TSD hai article 16 A and 9 and 11 no ho gdoje election mullala within 45 days under so molu need a president general secretary la other elected members atang baki central executive body atami mol co-opt nominate mullala complete mullal ho within 45 days ho hami oath taking and swearing mono palman gdo ho last year of kumula ada 2 months almost 2 months hala done amun kalabito halake done ne ho governing council tare advisory note ako mo issue mubune 5 March 2025 ki conduct of inquiry and investigation में complete mulala हैगा report में submit mulala ho governing council का decision lalala then only oath taking में mudopala then उनका present executive outgoing incumbent 13 of masala uno oil lukasito but nibya aji keno ke ga decision outcome de dokin hamun chima oba tentatively 15th of March solo aloso masala wana go fix mana and that 15 March hutar within the 45 days under ano advance pas dozon oba slow hami ngunu or taking mukula ga president mi mukula general secretary atami executive atam pura mukula ngun muteku hotel review hosi as per unka timeline os is don hami rong malomi ata numbayo henabar mukman numbayo taking lak man ham kan melo la do ngala hal henkindo si halamake bunya 2021 unka seska adu sablo kam la yo da more than 2 months almost 2 months hal done which is a proper settlement adoba hosisi unka tan supundu kunka nuna ichemuto katawla mana significance achievement ichemutal tokunami ho nuna way forward ngunu siska new incumbent me chuche advisory taikwa suggestion taikwa for the strength and more vibrant and robust TSD hal muda pasis ngunuka General Secretary Outgoing General Secretary tak Chatung ngunmi locally ke hongo I request atun to take over.
Thank you. Selinga ngun press briefings purpose of course ngo inga sega or taking meeting what I have briefed ki ngun ka major achievement in during our last tenure ngun ka tenure nagdone our teams how we have put our energies unnam kane energies logalala natampa ngun tanu jugo pala tanu sango pala unnam kane kamli kabit I have briefed here also. Anyway, so for record sake, I'm unka achievements, major achievement, what we have done. Oh, him in carry forward makinan. Just I want to just brief before the press. As soon as TSD ka General Secretary post me ejum malala, then we started ki tanika ngunu ekta buljambut sangkopa ngunu ka ekta office ko nila gido helala daden Srimati Samcha Loang the seeming request malala we got an allotment at Old Zero old below ka C office pa ka earmark matul loan un temporary allotment la buya temporary allotment la then we have a thought ki nahi we should have a bigger dream therefore munu ingso cultural center la amelala then we approached the governments to sanction this project and the cultural center there will be meeting conference hall there will be office and assembly hall and archive and library which will be the asset mun tanika asset pa do palula ngunu try malala because ngosi mi kalu kodon there were wrong narratives in the some corners ki sis kangun ka present TSDs where they are the contractor hitanchi kampa wrong narration in dola hopa ki ngosi mo elu kodon ngunu si mi even government ko katrahang bimarampa ngun we started from ngun crowdfunding malala si ngun taw bi accommodation we started constructing the base things like boundary walls retaining on wall that all that ngun muri wala ka unmika office binimi ek furnishing muri wala ngun muri lalla ngunu initially we really thanks to the honorable chief minister of Arunachal Pradesh he grant 3.2 crore ke ngunu bilala and 2.69 mi ngunu tender malala then isko ngunu ek office and the culture center that will be complex and complex whole pa everything facilities basic facilities where tanika asset atandoro palula langun whole concept butulangun muri lalla ngunu crowdfunding malala no one where the contractor everybody pai mi ngunu isa lalla still ngunu himtre construction mal dora ngunu initially that was G+1 lekin ngun G+1 mi review malala architecture design makolalla ngun ekta community we are one of the most advanced tribes communities hope ngunu sim ngun future next generation pa ngun how natape ngun asset create move kindo nelalla then we redesigns are the building structures and its cost hal malala it's come around 5 point some crore ke hemi ngunu malala sisi sis ka sanction motola ka dokne now as per the preliminary audit maga kota now we are already exceeded expenditures and none of us were the contractor just ngunu lab de kay aray ngun ko posalim la ngun sim dama be ngun kintu ngun mi future seka homoyo simi ngunu ka avanta ami avanta mo bitilo do pa ngunu ekta magabisala ngunu that was our target and now it is still progress and this need to carry forward by the our next incumbent next team la ngunu siska new team atangunu dorkar do this is the one important point number 2 regarding district bifurcation so many people's malarungun tanu malaya terungun criticize ngun abu je terungun criticize mune or tachin appreciation termune but lekin the keeping forward the following the spirit of Nishi and Apatani summit ngun Nishi Ilai society ni TSD ni ngunu agreement lalla ngun mi ka previous tenure ane 2021 so many meetings were held. Like in 2021 ka January 30, 2021 they had a meeting with the Nishi Ilai Society TSDs, the board of legislator actually assembly segment of Langun ko Jiro Kalatagi Taksav and then Tabatri Sav and all some of the Ngunko governing body council member Malang Tolanguno Rich Jolang Songunu TSD ni Nishi Ilai Society ni meeting salala they had made an agreement ki luar sponsor se mirong melongunu gas tadoke ho pangunu simi district anye babagsa bifurcate masalus lalala then they have broadly agreed ki 01 circle me ekta district 02 circle me ekta district hemi political boundary pamasalulala they have decided. And accordingly, on the next day, the joint memorandum were submitted to the Honorable Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh. Sika basis Songumi district create Motopelu. And after having a long discussions, nitty-gritty me workout purang nitty-gritty me discussion musulalala. Then finally we arrived on the district me bifurcate Marupa. Present political boundary me circle ka boundary me eta district ka boundary pa khaya salolala ngunu agreement ngun musulalla Nishi Ilai Society ni TSD. But then heko ngunu one thing we had made it very clear by both the NES and TSD ki ngun tanuku kifanyu district ko ngunu kedi ngun traditional boundary kedi doa koda that will remain to Apatani. Hekam right over that land will be inalienable. Nishiku ngunu tani luar somsero kedi doa koda that right over that land by the Nishis will be remain inalienable and absolute. Halangun agreement musulalala ngunu political boundary mi ngunu temporary pa mane khaya salu sulala ngunu mutolado. Hekamuko what we did ki heko 2024 after bifurcation 2023 ka March ka 1 tarikh ho I think Kipanyu district was inaugurated on the basis of the Nishi Ilai Society TSD ka agreement ka basis ho masulalala. Then there were certain hitches confusion dotola then Nishi Ilai Society TSD ningun again we had a meeting with the DC Luar Sabunsri ki suka any issues matter dorokoda heka localities area any boundary dispute wagara dokoda hek boundary dispute tokoda party to the boundary dispute they will decide the fate of that area. Like for example जोराम नी मरांता के नुसो को दाम जोराम मेरे मरांता के सिर्फ बात करेगा इसमें होल अपातनी होल निशी involved की मकेला हला उन decision उन last 2024 उन last तो and on that basis we have suggested to constitute a local consultative committee. The boundary area that area का दोबासन heko local boundary committee constitute muropangunu suggest muto and that has been carried forwarded and now any objections or any claim and objection doroko that we have invited DC 0 has invited ki anybody claim and objection doroko they can submit it to the DC under the chairmanship of the ADC 0 hal muropangun matolone then heko malala. And I must tell you one thing, it's very good news. Like, for example, Joram and Mudangtage, now they have almost settled their boundaries. And hekmi ekta model pabutola, then we can go to other area. Kamni dopa. hela ngunu bifurcation hote done. And however, there were criticisms, but the benefit, there is benefit as well. And because of the district creations, we can have our own plan. Ato kung plan muskindo. Ato kung planning body so dokindo ngunu luar sabun serike. We have separate Jila Parishad chairpersons, panchayat hote. We have any parties basis hote, we have a separate entity. Now that will definitely long run or that it will be benefited. And anything because our district is now one of the, I think the smallest district in Arunachal Pradesh. So plannings, we will have a one MLA, one DCs, and our own one ZPCs. The planning method that will be easier for us, and in future positive, hopefully that positively, hopefully future it is beneficial for us. So this is the second one. The third one, besides other things, third one is the script issues. There were some problems. 2023 we had settled. The Pop Sharmi Society, molu case file malala, double I script me double I W minus lala, Pop Sharmi Society case file malala mane, unisimi implement malamadopa, they have state the matter. Unu third language kitab molinkin doku, hopa molu third language kitab molimol state court of state mobile butola done. Unu tane there were a lot of differences because of this script. लेकिन मोनो मोर हेमी क्योंकि everybody's tani anybody in interest okoda, but when the common interest of the all tani is the top, definitely we have to consider our unka grievances me. So we had Pope Sharmi mi unu yarulala kolla and condition that you have to withdraw the case. Okay, lulala. Then they accordingly and they have withdraw the case. And I think really thank to them because good sense prevail upon them. And then we had a meeting with the Pop Sharmi Society. When Pop Sharmi Society में कमोल में कर लोने, उन एक चीज आज से स्लोक खरीबला, नोने स्क्रिप्ट इशू में नोन वर्किंग कुमा one. Number two, script method will be right over the script will be remain to the TSD. None of the any tanu they will not interfere on this. Munul agree salala. Then Pop Sharmi had already they have considered molu chalo okay. Lekin nun kami mun double I me mun first mun implement makavich. Accordingly mol ko implement makalala. Now we have brought out the two books, book 1 and book 2. Third language for class 6 for class 6 and class 7. Munu muldo. Now class 8 kisi si dokinoku da class 8 ke dokinoku, class 8 ke book 3. Now this is to be done at the earliest because next academic year pangun si makindoko. Then we did another good thing here. Arunachal unko private school community based organizations kone kote introduce my except Tagin and Apatani. And we are the second community based organizations who have introduced third language in the private schools. Hope anguno because third language a private school government school me student strength avyado. Now third language government ka policy implement madokoda. Now there are only few in class 6 and 7 8. Hope angun private school implement makoda that will be unke we will not do that justice. Hope angun private school angun introduce mabilala. Even we had paid a remunerations to the teachers also from my own pocket. And then we have published, besides we have published the alphabetical chart wagara malala ngun. Another one is NCRT textbook class 6 hopa maliotre. Then we were proofreading and betting mabilala. Proofreading betting malala NCRT ka textbook mi mabite. Then we have did one thing. There should be no ord in NCRT kitabo ki gyuchi gyutla or takibo na lage. Lolala we have decided we have deleted the gyuchi gyuts from that book. And kyunki this is discriminatory in many sense. Hope angunu hemi once for all NCRT to moluko include gutolangunu proofreading malala na this is not good langun delete matol atute. And this is I think this is very very important step we have taken. Because we tane ekta united tane tane all tane is now one tane. content of the creations of the third apatani third language now which will be telecasted, and that is according to the other area like script mi base mobdola atami mutu. Then another one is research projects on research and documentations of the tangible and intangible heritage of apatanila. Simingunu government ko initially they had sanctioned the 10 lakh he khaba pa ngunu parsumalar government mi si konte khe ki malolala. Then we able to get another 10 lakh, that means 20 lakhs for this work. Now it is now almost completed. Sika documentation sita si simulado. Sika documentation si, this will be a very very important document. And present documentation mujala latre, this should be vetted, proofreading, cross section of society, intellectual involved makindo. And then Mitra, I think now financial expenditure and 50% of the financial expenditure has been done on this project. But we are almost complete the Pasimuk Doku. Again, documentation of folklore of the tribes of Arunachal Pradesh. Sika audiovisual we have successfully done it, and then will be brought out shortly by the authority. Now, another important project cancer 2022 also health camp malala cancer. I must thank Dr. Bamintada under his leadership and initiatives, and then Daden DCs Sri Bamin Nime Sahab more luka. Then many have put forward supported this event, and that was mega cancer camp dolala, mega health camp dolala. Then we have focused so cancer, we have focused on the cancer, why there is people are suffering from cancer lula. Then we had submitted a memorandum to the Dr. V. Bora Cancer Institute, Guwahati. Molo milolala, directors milolala, ngunmi cancer zero. So why visceral part of cancer? Taru stomach cancer natam unso zero endemic do natam so unko zero ham kanili do. And as per the data also, the highest cancer incidence ngunu so Lower Sumatra district ko hoido. And this is very alarming case because health and so misi kaka ko ham kaneng so bimar ako ngwa sada cancer pa ko lan ludo. This is very very serious health issue. So hope and to dedicate, and last year to dedicate when I must say when our former General Secretary late Pura Tago, he died from the cancer. Tab then it's really impact us. Nahi, agar ऐसे ही करता है ये तो कोदा ताने मुझे जे पाजे serious तो लोला. Then what we did, then Bibora Cancer Institute. So I personally went there in the month of August last year. Personally, ala Dr. Bora Borta Kurmik Kapalala. Then he was really happy. Now community is coming up, and you come forward, and this is the very very good sign. Mo instantly, nga request me, TSD request me, nahi, आप लोग पक्का करेगा, and we will constitute the ethics committee very soon at institute levels and the streams. Arunachal Cancer Society more collaborate mobdola. So pilot project cancer much pilot project study to screening the cancers, stomach cancers. Then they have come forward, and then we have successfully the first instances. This is the pilot project. A pilot project we recently concluded, and many turns up. More than 200 minimum like in then we turn up money, and it's very very encouraging. And this I must tell you one thing. Seeing India for one of the most this is first of its kind community driven research pilot projects on cancer. And see me result why zero cancer say hoido. See me this result will be come to know maybe after a year or two. But Sika project this will be last for 5 years. And then again we have requested the institute not only pilot, and there should be cohort study, cohort research on the why our peoples are suffering from the stomach cancer. And they have also agreed, and then that will be later on, it will be live with the ministry, and they will sanction and grant and whatever. And everybody should cooperate in future also. This is very important things what we have teams atau initiative makatol. Now after take command, and now I request one thing ki Dr. Jose, you, since you are the member secretary of the delimitation committee, just briefed what the latest progress on the delimitations matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chatung. Of course, delimitation ngun mulanu chindo ni stage done ngun kolo tarega general conference so report bito. Financial aspect also simularu ka nena ngunu public ko ngunu miakumi pagala ngun miatokon and jepa nunu mi public atame ano ora okla ngunu mi paira pachola. Thank you so much for your warmly and selfless contribution for the delimitation course. Also see case kolo punrai ho ai chakane March last month ka sesgra ka seka na 16 mo sepe ada mas perida mas piala ko done hu chada ko hoi hearing mukindo also singunu hra mi petition file mudal mampa mention mukindo ki semi compulsory hearing la ro pala also si court high court under the table of chief justice hal ke doran o mungun pujara update milya so.
Thank you. Lastly, I want to say now being a TSD, I think I really thanks to everyone, every Tanimi, I really thanks ki because of your support, and we have been able to carry forward our duties for last 3 months, 3 years, and whatever we have decided, whatever we have did it, and maybe all Malaru himto masu jalopa, but then we have thought ki this is the larger interest of the Tane. Therefore, we have decided nenungun decision late. Maybe it might have hurt someone, but lekin nunka support and your love and this hungunumi support malala, we could do it for the served our society for last 3 years. Now the one very important thing is we need to have a very good relationship with our political leader, because they are also fighting for the cause of our community, and we must support as a community leaders. We must support their cause, but at the same time we need to maintain a healthy decision, a healthy distance from the political leader also. This is one very important thing to do. Another one is now the challenges is now the challenge before us is how to uphold the dignity and honor of the Tane before the rest of the other community. This is very challenging. Ngun Tane atu ke ngun sukso ato limba ka ato decision last major decision term ka last very nicely we have social structure. Lekin ngun other community ka agi ngun dignity me ngun honor me ngun tama pe ngun uphold muchine. This is our challenges. Now therefore we have decided that we must have a like a Nishi Apatani summit, which we did in 2015. That was a landmark decisions, and this between the Nishis and Apatanis. We are still maintaining our relationship with the Nishis on the spirit of that Nishis and Apatani summit 2015. Similarly, we had sekarang 2025 ke beginning, we had an very wonderful summit. Adi is the one of the second largest I would say community in Arunachal Pradesh. Molumi Adi and Apatani summit Pasigato, we had made an agreement with them and to how to promote the communal harmony between the two communities and how to promote the relationships between the social relationship between two communities, humingun atu bodola we have made an agreement. This is the one on another landmark achievements for our team. And then this is not only for between the two communities, but to promote the communal harmony in entire Arunachal Pradesh. Because today's what is the challenges is to how to maintain the sustains the communal harmony of different tribes of Arunachal Pradesh. Therefore, we had contributed bit on this part, and I would like to thanks the media. And any questions from the media?
Just before questions, ko just I would like to add ako manando. Sloka ka oath taking manansi based on the findings of the inquiry and the decision taken by the governing council. Kolo 11 तारीख मार्च में governing council advised note ako bi कि inquiry report has been submitted and committee has thoroughly and examined alleged leakage of shortlisted probable candidates for TSD could not be established. Hopa see report is accepted and then closed. Ho haka basis on me central executive body minduno out of office and handing over motoku telotala solomonu motoku, and I on behalf of entire central executive body, outgoing central executive body TSD as a spokesperson ngonuka outgoing central executive body member atami episode manando thanks manando nebalogar poejoka atuka loko koso कि 3 years selflessly sacrifice mulala atuka काम काज mana apalala uruka eka mugolo ko mana apalala soka काम ने में ano ay mo la sacrifice mate ato to ko posa to ko posa mi mubudola society काम mubne ho any mukha mara doro ko hami we really apologize munu mi hello jakpe o munu tare munu intentionally munu mamatoke. Secondly and lastly, and but not the least, and Saloka most important thing, or taking on Solo Lato, Labne, and we congratulate entire Central Executive Body member, especially the President, new President Pura Abasambio, and General Secretary Hage Komo, Ho Loka, entire Central Executive Body me. Best wishes, and we have full faith that Nunu Tansupundu Kumi Hongo Tanami Asang Dola Ho. The benchmark which TSD Outgoing has set, how you channel on handle, and with this, I thank you everybody. Any queries, questions?
सर मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगी कि TSD का इलेक्शन प्रोसेस के बारे में, क्योंकि इसमें वोट इलेक्शन और सिलेक्शन होता है, तो लोगों का कहना है कि अगर इसमें इंडिपेंडेंटली इलेक्शन होता तो शायद कि अभी जो कंप्लेन भी आ रहा है वो नहीं आना था, क्योंकि उसमें सबको इक्वल चांस मिलना था, सबको वोट कास्ट करने का इक्वल चांस मिलना था, सबको कैंडिडेट बनने का इक्वल चांस मिलना था. तो मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगी कि आप ब्रीफली जो TSD का इलेक्शन प्रोसेस होता है, सिस्टम होता है, उसे एक्सप्लेन करें.
अभी जो हो गया सो गया. आई डोंट वांट टू गो बैक. सो अभी जो हो गया इलेक्शंस एंड जो एज पर द बायलॉस जो हुआ है, ऑफ कोर्स आई एग्री विथ योर पॉइंट. देयर इज सर्टेन डिस्क्रिपेंसीज देयर इन द बायलॉ. देयर इज नो मेंशनिंग ऑफ एनीथिंग दैट anybody can file his own candidate, sir. I mean apply for the candidate. But there is the provisions for the constitutions of the search committee, and they will finalize the probable candidate. It is only there. There is nobody can file मैं contest करेगा ऐसे file नहीं कर सकता है as per the bylaw of the TSD. But however, on that day the house has decided कि ये माइन्यूट एक सब पास करके कि जो कर सकता है फाइलिंग कर सकता है, एंड दे शुड बी अलाउड टू फाइल देयर कैंडिडेचर्स कि मैं कौन सा पोस्ट पर या प्रेसिडेंट या सेक्रेटरी जो कौन सा पोस्ट पर मैं अप्लाई करना चाहता है, 5 बजे तक कर लो बोल के 15 तारीख ये वो तो कर लिया है. देयर इज सर्टेन डिस्क्रिपेंसी. उसमें वी नीड टू लुक इनटू इन द फ्यूचर में. आगे अभी जो जैसे हो गया उसको फिर दोबारा आई डोंट वांट टू ये सब करना नहीं चाहता है. लेकिन डेफिनेटली जो अभी कैबिनेट नया की टीम्स है डेफिनेटली दे विल ये लूप होल को तो ये करेगा।
सर जैसे आपने बताया था कि निशी आपातानी समिट 2015 में हुआ था और आदि आपातानी समिट 2024 को हुआ है।
25
25 को हुआ है। तो मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगी कि उधर से 2015 से लेके अभी तक आप लोगों में क्या क्या चेंजेस देखने को मिला है आफ्टर द समिट, और बोथ द कम्युनिटी को क्या क्या बेनिफिट्स मिला है समिट के द्वारा?
हाँ, ये 2015 जो है दिस इज़ वेरी वेरी इम्पोर्टेंट द समिट बिटवीन नॉट ओनली आपातानी एंड निशीस, एंड ये सब देखने के लिए वो ये चीज़ को एडॉप्ट करने के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है। 2015 अर्लियर 2015 से पहले देर छोटा छोटा घटना भी हमेशा उसमें कम्युनल लाइन पे ले जाता था कि कोई निशी और आपातानी झगड़ा होता है तो कोई निशी पूरा आकर नहीं आपातानी कर रहा है, आपातानी पूरा, इस प्रकार से कम्युनल लाइन में ले जाता था। नाउ 2015 के बाद में हमने इसमें यह एम्फेसिस किया कि व्हाट आर दी कम्युनल को कौन सी चीज़ को कहा जाएगा। जैसे एक्स वाई आपातानी एक्स निशी वाई दोनों झगड़ा कर रहा है, उसमें कोई आपातानी सारा आपातानी इन्वॉल्व नहीं करेगा, सारा निशी इन्वॉल्व नहीं करेगा, ये एक्स वाई का दोनों का झगड़ा रहेगा। ये क्रिमिनल्स लॉ के हिसाब से उसको किया जाएगा। कोई विलेज निशी का विलेज आपातानी का विलेज कोई बाउंड्री इशूज हो, ये दोनों बात करेगा, सारा निशी नहीं आएगा, सारा आपातानी नहीं आएगा। और कोई क्लेन या कोई ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल ऐसे करेगा तो वहीं पर रिस्ट्रिक्ट करेगा। सो हमने कम्युनल जो कलर देता था पहले उसको पूरा हम लोग मिटा दिया, एंड 2015 के बाद में ये ऑलमोस्ट नील का बराबर हो गया। तो झगड़ा तो होता है लेकिन वी डोंट टेक इट इन ए कम्युनल लाइन, ये एक चीज़ है। दूसरा चीज़ है अभी हम लोग एक दूसरे को फिर जानने लगा है। अर्लियर देयर बिकॉज ऑफ दिस लाइन पता नहीं कि नाइबर्स में ऐसे कैसे हुआ होगा, लेकिन अभी 2015 के बाद में वी सीज टू ईच अदर्स एज ए फ्रेंड। नाउ वी कॉल कि जैसे कि हमारा नाइबर्स का निशी को हम लोग मयांग बोलता है, वो लोग भी हमको मयांग बोलता है। और मैं उस समय में आया प्रेसिडेंट होके, मैंने और मेरा आई मस्ट टेल यू मयांग जोराम लाली, इंजीनियर जोराम लाली और मैंने खुद, हमने पहले जो गोतू अजिंग हुआ करता था वो गोतू अजिंग को हम दोनों पहले समिट में उसमें ऑफिशियली रिकॉग्नाइज करके हम लोग गोतू अजिंग रचाया। उसमें हम लोग कसम खा के करता है ज़िंदगी भर हमारा लाइफ जनरेशन आफ्टर जनरेशन दोस्ती रहेगा, उसमें हम लोग मिथुन एक्सचेंज करके किया है। दिस काइंड ऑफ एग्जाम्पल। और मैट्रिमोनियल रिलेशनशिप भी थोड़ा थोड़ा धीरे धीरे करके बढ़ रहा है। सो थोड़ा बहुत झगड़ा तो होते रहेगा, जैसे कि बाउंड्री इशूज़ हो गया, अभी बाइफरकेशन करने के बाद में जो बाउंड्री इशूज़ हो गया उसमें भी हम लोग क्लियरली कहा गया है कि जो अफेक्टेड लैंड एरिया अफेक्टेड एरिया वो विलेज ही बात करेगा, सारा निशी सारा आपातानी नहीं आएगा। तो इसीलिए ये निशी आपातानी का 2015 का समिट का बेनिफिट ये है, और वी आर लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड और भी अच्छा रहेगा।
सर जो आदि के साथ समिट हुआ था उनसे आप लोग क्या अपेक्षा रखते हैं आगे जाके?
हाँ।
और मैं आपसे ये भी जानना चाहूँगी कि आप लोग इन फ्यूचर कुछ विजन रखते हैं TSD का तरफ से कि दूसरा कम्युनिटी का साथ भी समिट हो ऐसे?
हाँ, ये आदि और आपातानी का इसमें हम लोग ये सोचा कि जस्ट लाइक निशी आपातानी जैसे समिट किया है, क्योंकि आज का देखो आज अभी तो हम लोग क्या करना है, हमारा फ्यूचर जनरेशन कैसे जिंदा रहना है, फ्यूचर जनरेशन कैसे हम लोग आगे बढ़ना है। तो वी कैन नॉट कंफाइन आवरसेल्व्स कि जीरो में बैठकर हम सारा दुनिया को देखा जैसे बात नहीं कर सकता है। वी नीड टू हैव इंटरेक्ट विद द अदर कम्युनिटीज। तो अरुणाचल को आगे करना है, कम्युनिटी जो सब एक साथ डेवलप होना है, तो ये एक हम दिस इज द ओनली वे क्रिएटिंग द प्लेटफॉर्म फॉर आवर यंगर जनरेशंस। कम से कम तो कोई झगड़ा होगा, कोई कुछ इशू में होगा, डेफिनेटली वी विल रेफर कि आपातानी और निशी ने हम लोगों आपातानी और आदि ने ये तो एग्रीमेंट करके रखा था, कहीं मैरिज का मैटर हो, कहीं कोई किसी झगड़ा भी हो, तो हम लोगों ने उसमें डिसीजन लिया है बोल के वी कैन हैव ए रेफरेंस पॉइंट कि हम तो नहीं सोचता है कि वो हम लोग जो किया है तो वही पूरा बंद कर देगा कोई फ्यूचर को, ऐसे नहीं। दिस विल बी द रेफरेंस पॉइंट फॉर अस इन द फ्यूचर्स कि हमारे रिलेशंस दोनों कम्युनिटी समुदाय का कम्युनिटी को दोनों कम्युनिटी को कैसे हम लोग एक कॉर्डियल एटमॉस्फेयर में एक कॉर्डियल रिलेशनशिप बने। एंड इसी दिशा में वी विश कि हमारा न्यू टीम दे विल ऑल्सो डू आई थिंक डेफिनेटली वी हैव नाइबर्स ऑल्सो, हमारे जैसे कि तागिन है, नाइबर्स इमीडिएट नाइबर्स है, और हमारा गालो है, ये सब चीज़ वो लोग हमारा टीम नया टीम दे विल वो लोग सोचेगा